Okay, so get ready, because today we are diving deep into some serious Nigerian celebrity drama.
Ooh, sounds juicy.
It is. We're talking about IVD and Blessing CEO.
A businessman and a relationship expert?
You got it.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What have they been up to?
Well, their New Year's messages have just sent the internet into a total frenzy.
Really? New Year's messages? That doesn't sound too dramatic.
Oh, but it is. We've got this Just Mania article here that breaks down all the online reactions. And let me tell you, it's messy. Like, seriously messy.
All right, you've got my attention. What's so messy about a couple of New Year's posts?
It's not just the posts themselves, it's the whole backstory, the context. It goes way deeper than just a Happy New Year.
Okay, yeah, you're right. I'm starting to see why this is more than just your typical celebrity gossip. There's got to be more to it.
There is a lot more. And it all ties back to this really tragic event that happened back in 2022. You remember when IVD's wife, Bimbo, passed away?
Yeah, of course. That was awful. But the details were always kind of unclear, right?
Exactly. And to make things even more complicated, Blessing CEO was actually accused of being involved somehow.
Whoa, I had no idea. Was that ever confirmed?
Not really. Things got pretty murky. But that's exactly why these New Year's posts are causing such a stir.
Makes sense. Everyone's reading between the lines, trying to figure out what's really going on.
Especially with IVD's post. He went all out, saying things like, "I was dragged, disgraced, and disrespected."
And I'm assuming he's implying that Blessing CEO was the one who stood by him.
Oh, absolutely. He even said he came from nowhere to wipe my tears.
Wow. It almost sounds like he's trying to paint himself as the victim here.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that. Like, he's trying to control the narrative and rebuild his image.
It's interesting how he uses language to do that. All those strong verbs, dragged, disgraced, they really evoke a sense of him being unfairly targeted.
Right. And then he immediately throws in Blessing CEO as his savior, the one who rescued him from all that pain.
It's clever, but it's also kind of manipulative, don't you think?
Totally. He's playing the sympathy card, big time. But he's doing it in this subtle way, like he's not explicitly denying anything. But he's definitely trying to shift the focus.
And it seems to be working, at least to some extent. This article mentions that a lot of people are actually buying into his story, praising their resilience and all that.
It's crazy how much people love a good comeback story, even when the details are super sketchy.
It really makes you wonder if this was their plan all along. Like, lay low for a while, let the dust settle, and then reemerge as this united front. Bold move, considering the serious allegations that are still out there.
It is a gamble, that's for sure. And he even hints at more to come, saying something about the truth eventually coming out.
Ooh, talk about a cliffhanger. He's keeping everyone on the edge of their seats.
He's turning this whole thing into a reality show. Although I gotta ask, do you think he's being genuine? Or is he just dangling this truth out there to deflect attention from the current controversy?
Honestly, it could be both. He might genuinely believe he's been wrong, but he's also smart enough to know how to use that to his advantage.
But amidst all of IVD's theatrics, Blessing CEO's response was so understated. It was just, "IVD, Happy New Year."
Yeah, that's a stark contrast to his dramatic outpouring.
It's almost like a whisper compared to his shout. What do you think that means? Is she playing it cool on purpose?
It's hard to say. Maybe she's letting him take the lead, or maybe it's just genuine affection.
Or maybe she's using silence as a strategy.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more.
What if, by not addressing the controversy directly, she's actually maintaining a sense of mystery and control?
That's a really good point. By not saying anything, she's letting people project their own interpretations onto her.
It's like she's saying, "We're good. We don't need to explain ourselves."
And that silence can be incredibly powerful. It keeps them in the spotlight, fuels speculation, and they get to control the narrative by what they don't say.
Speaking of narrative control, did you notice how the author of this article, Mr. J. Wonder, emphasizes his own journalistic integrity?
You mean how he talks about his experience reporting on Nigerian news for a decade and how he focuses on facts? Yeah, I noticed that.
It's subtle, but it definitely adds a layer of legitimacy to the whole story.
Like he's implicitly vouching for the authenticity of the relationship, even though everything surrounding it is so messy.
Right, it's like he's trying to walk this fine line between acknowledging the drama and maintaining his objectivity.
It's almost like he's saying, look, I'm not endorsing what they did, but I believe their love is real.
It's a fascinating interplay between personal relationships and media narratives.
It really is. But let's zoom out for a second, think about the bigger picture. This whole situation with IVD and Blessing CEO, while unique in its details, is also a reflection of something we see happening all the time.
Oh, totally. We see this pattern with celebrity couples all the time. The messy breakups, the accusations, the attempts to rebuild their image. It's like a recurring theme in the age of social media.
And we, the public, are completely captivated by it.
It's like we can't look away from the drama.
But what's really fascinating is how these narratives get shaped and manipulated.
Like with IVD and Blessing CEO, they're clearly aware of how to play the public image game.
They're using emotional language, strategic silence, everything they can to control how people see them.
And they're playing it well, that's for sure. The question is, at what cost? And can they really win in the long run?
That's the million-dollar question. It really is the question, isn't it? Can they actually escape their past, or will it always be there? And we can't forget about the public. They have a lot to say.
Oh, tell me about it. The comments on that Gizmania article are wild. It's like a war zone down there.
Oh, really? What are people saying?
Well, you've got some who are all in on this whole fresh start thing, praising their strength and love and all that.
Yeah, makes sense. People love a good redemption arc.
Right. But then you've got others who are totally calling it a publicity stunt, questioning their motives, saying it's all fake.
So a real mixed bag of opinions.
Totally. And honestly, I can see both sides. The timing of their announcement, right on New Year's Day, it does feel a bit calculated, doesn't it?
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's like they were waiting for the perfect moment to grab everyone's attention.
Exactly. But on the other hand, maybe they really are just trying to move on. It's hard to know what to believe.
That's the tricky thing about these kinds of stories. There's always that underlying tension, that sense that we're only seeing a carefully crafted version of events.
And that brings up a whole other issue. Where do we draw the line between our natural curiosity about public figures and their right to privacy?
Especially when there's a tragedy involved. Like in this case, it's a delicate balance.
It really is. It's easy to get caught up in the gossip and forget that these are real people with real emotions, not just characters in some drama.
Exactly. We have to be careful not to dehumanize them in our rush to judge.
Absolutely. But then the question becomes, how do we stay informed and engage in these conversations without contributing to the problem?
Well, I think it starts with being more mindful of how we consume information.
So being more critical of what we read and where it's coming from.
Exactly. And also being aware of our own biases.
That's a good point. It's easy to let our emotions cloud our judgment, especially with a story like this.
We need to be wary of overly emotional language, especially when it's used to deflect blame or gain sympathy.
Like how IBD talked about being dragged and disrespected.
Yeah, exactly. It's powerful language, but it doesn't actually address any of the specific accusation.
Right, it's a distraction technique. And then you've got Blessing CEO's silence, which is almost deafening in its own way.
Her silence is really interesting. It could be a calculated move, or it could be something else entirely.
It's hard to know for sure.
Yeah.
With all these layers of mystery and unanswered questions, do you think we'll ever get to the bottom of this?
Honestly, I don't know. There are always going to be missing pieces in these kinds of stories.
So what are we supposed to do? Just accept that we might never know the full truth.
I think so. It's about being comfortable with ambiguity.
But we can still have these conversations, right? We can still analyze and discuss what we do know.
Absolutely. But we have to do it thoughtfully and responsibly.
So no jumping to conclusions or making assumptions.
Right. We have to be critical thinkers, question the narratives we're presented with, and consider all sides of the story.
It's a lot to keep in mind, but it's important. We have a responsibility to be more than just passive consumers of information.
Exactly. We're actively shaping the narrative with our reactions and interpretations.
And that's a powerful thing.
It is. And with that power comes a responsibility to use it wisely.
This whole thing really makes you think, doesn't it? Redemption, forgiveness, second chances. It's heavy stuff.
It is, especially with such a public tragedy involved. It makes you wonder, can someone really come back from something like this?
Yeah, and can we, the public, ever truly forgive?
It's a tough question. Can we separate the person from their actions? It's something people have been debating for ages.
And in this case, it's even more complicated, with Bimbo's passing and everything. There's a real sense of sadness that hangs over it all.
Absolutely. It's like everyone's trying to tiptoe around the issue, wanting to discuss it, but also being sensitive to the situation.
And let's be real, the internet doesn't really do nuance, does it?
Not really, no. It's all instant reactions and judgments.
People are quick to jump to conclusions, especially when there's a scandal involved.
And that's where things can get dangerous. We forget that there are real people with real feelings involved.
It's like we dehumanize them, turning them into characters in some big drama.
It's easy to do when you're just reading headlines and comments. We lose sight of the human element.
So how do we change that? How do we have these conversations in a more responsible way?
Well, I think we need to start by acknowledging our own biases.
You mean recognizing that we all come to these stories with our own preconceived notions?
Exactly, and we need to be willing to challenge those notions, to be open to different perspectives.
And maybe admit that we don't have all the answers.
Absolutely. There's always more to the story than what we see on the surface.
It's like that saying, don't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Exactly. And even then, we might still not fully understand their journey.
So what about Ivd And Blessing CEO? Do we give them the benefit of the doubt? Believe that they can change? That their love is real?
Honestly, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. Everyone has to decide for themselves.
But we should at least be open to the possibility, right? That people can grow and evolve.
I think that's important, to hold space for redemption, even when it's hard.
It's a challenging concept, for sure, especially in today's culture where everyone's so quick to judge and cancel.
But maybe that's why this story is so important. It forces us to confront our own beliefs about forgiveness and second chances.
And to remember that we're all human, we all make mistakes.
Exactly. None of us are perfect.
And who are we to decide who deserves forgiveness and who doesn't?
It's not our place to judge, really. We can observe, discuss, analyze, but ultimately, it's up to each individual to decide what they believe.
That's a good point. It's about having empathy, understanding that we all have our own struggles.
And that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope for healing and growth.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder this complex and fascinating story.
Remember, there's always more to the story than meets the eye. And sometimes, the most profound discoveries are the ones we make about ourselves.
Until next time, keep those critical thinking skills sharp. And remember, keep diving deep.